Guys, stop scrolling for a second. I need you to hear me out because what I'm about to break down could literally change how you look at your portfolio this year. Now, before we dive in, let me hit you with the straight-up reality. Crypto is not dead. Yeah, I know the headlines. Market crash, fear everywhere. Regulators breathing down everyone's neck. But listen, every single crash in history has been the setup for the biggest wealth transfers we've ever seen. And this time, it's not just about Bitcoin or Ethereum. No, I'm urging you to look deeper at XLM and HBAR, two projects that, if you actually understand what's happening behind the scenes, could end up being the lifelines of this entire next era. And before I unpack this, if you're new here, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me if you're holding XLM, HBAR, or both. This community is built around real research, raw takes, and conversations that don't sugarcoat the truth. No hype, no fake moonboy predictions, just straight facts with context. And trust me, you'll want to be here for the ride, because I don't want you waking up in 2030 saying, "Man, I wish I had listened when it was still cheap." All right, now let's frame this conversation. We're sitting in 2025, right? The market looks shaky. Traditional finance is still trying to figure out what the heck CBDCs even mean for cross-border payments. And yet, quietly, silently, projects like Stellar and HEDERA are landing real partnerships. We're talking about governments, central banks, Fortune 500 companies actually building with this tech. Because the truth is, if you buy blindly, you'll probably get wrecked. But if you buy informed, if you actually understand what these networks are doing behind the scenes, you're positioning yourself ahead of 90% of retail investors who only chase hype. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, because I'm about to take you through the real story behind XLM and HBAR in 2025, the crash, the partnerships, the adoption curve, the price outlook, and where this whole thing could be heading by 2030. I'm just so you're clear. I'm not here to tell you to buy now or regret forever. I'm here to show you the receipts. The data, the news, the reports. You make your own call. Cool? All right, let's dive into the market setup and why this so-called crash might actually be the biggest blessing in disguise for Stellar and HEDERA holders. All right, so let's set the scene. It's 2025. The market right now feels tense, like everyone's holding their breath. On the surface, crypto looks like it's on shaky ground. Prices are swinging harder than ever. Mainstream media is throwing headlines around like, "Crypto winter extended." And regulators, man. Regulators are out here making it seem like everything digital is a ticking time bomb. But here's the thing. That's exactly what it looked like before every single run in crypto history. Let me explain. Look back at 2018 after the 2017 Bitcoin bubble popped. People said crypto was dead. Projects vanished. Tokens lost 90% of their value. And everybody swore they'd never touch a digital wallet again. What happened? That reset cleared out the trash. The strong builders stuck around. Fast forward to 2020 to 2021, and boom, the biggest bull run ever. Now zoom into 2022 to 2023. Another crash. Exchanges collapsing, scams getting exposed, regulators finally stepping in heavy. What did most people do? They ran. They called it quits. They dumped everything. But what did the big players do? The institutions? They bought infrastructure. They partnered with the right protocols. They tested CBDCs. They funded research into networks like Stellar and HEDERA. That's the cycle. Every crash isn't the end. It's the reset button. And if you're listening closely, this is where XLM and HBAR come into the picture. Because while everyone's panicking, these two projects are quietly building in directions that actually matter. Why the 2025 crash looks different. Now here's where 2025 is unique. This isn't just a Bitcoin correction or an Ethereum fee debate. This is a broad market squeeze. We've got central banks aggressively rolling out CBDCs. We've got the US, Europe, and Africa tightening their digital asset frameworks. We've got big institutions demanding energy-efficient, scalable, and regulatory-friendly chains. That means the projects that are too slow, too expensive, or too controversial, they're going to get left behind. Sorry to say it, but a lot of tokens in your watch list are going to zero. But the ones positioned for compliance, for real-world utility, for enterprise adoption, those are the survivors. And guess what? Stellar and HEDERA tick almost every single one of those boxes. Let's be real for a second. XLM doesn't get the hype because it's not flashy. It's not a meme coin. It doesn't have influencers pumping it with when Moon tweets every week. Same with HBAR, it's kind of the quiet giant. You don't see it trending on Twitter like Dogecoin or Shiba. But that's exactly why I'm urging you to pay attention. Because in crypto, the loudest voices are rarely where the smartest money is going. Institutions don't care about memes. They care about settlement times, compliance frameworks, energy usage, partnerships, and long-term scalability. XLM is literally designed to move money across borders, fast, cheap, efficient. HEDERA is designed for enterprise-grade applications with predictable fees and insane speed. If you think those aren't important in a world where banks and governments are going digital, you're not paying attention. And this isn't just me talking theory. Let's look at what's actually happening this year. Stellar, XLM. The Stellar Development Foundation has been doubling down on remittance use cases in Africa and Latin America. Their partnership with MoneyGram is still one of the strongest fiat-to-crypto bridges. And in 2025, reports show they're working with multiple African central banks on digital currency pilots. HEDERA HBAR. Just last year, HEDERA secured new partnerships with companies like FIS, a payments giant, and expanded their governing council to include more global corporations. As of 2025, HEDERA is processing over 1 billion transactions per month, most of them enterprise-related, not speculation. Now, let me ask you something. Would you rather hold a token that pumps on hype and collapses when influencers stop tweeting? Or a token being integrated into the actual financial system? That's the choice you're making here. Why the market crash could be a blessing. Here's the part nobody likes to hear, but it's the truth. Crashes are where the wealth is built. When prices drop, fear takes over. Retail dumps their bags. But if you zoom out, that's the moment institutions and long-term players quietly load up. And history repeats, the crash becomes the launchpad. If XLM drops, if HBR drops, that's not the end. That's the opportunity. Because the fundamentals haven't changed. The partnerships haven't disappeared. The adoption curve is still rising. All that's changed is the price, and if you believe in where these projects are going, that's your chance to accumulate. Now, let's not ignore the big brother in the room, Ethereum. ETH is still the backbone of DeFi, NFTs, and a huge chunk of the smart contract world. But here's the kicker. ETH's biggest problem has always been fees and scalability. Even with the upgrades, it's still slower and more expensive compared to HEDERA. That's why I'm saying ETH will stay relevant, but enterprises looking for predictable costs and efficiency. They're looking at alternatives. That's why HEDERA is in the conversation. That's why Stellar is in the conversation. So the narrative isn't ETH versus HBAR versus XLM. The narrative is ETH builds the open ecosystem, but HBAR and XLM are the bridges to enterprise and global finance. The 2025 market feels scary, but step back and you'll see it's the same story every cycle. Crash, fear, reset, adoption. And when the dust clears, the projects with real-world use cases, enterprise adoption, and government partnerships are the ones that thrive. That's why in this video, we're zeroing in on XLM and HBAR. Not because they're trendy, not because they're hyped, but because they're positioned exactly where the world is heading. Price outlook XLM, HBAR, and the road to 2030. All right, let's talk numbers. Because let's be real, no matter how much we talk fundamentals, partnerships, enterprise adoption, or global macro trends, at the end of the day, most people watching want to know, okay, but how much can XLM or HBAR actually be worth? So let's break it down. How to think about price targets in crypto. Here's the first thing. Most people get price predictions wrong because they just throw random numbers around. They'll say XLM to $100 or HBAR to $500 without ever asking the most important question. What's the market cap? Market cap equals price times circulating supply. That's the real metric. Because you can't just say XLM will be $100 without realizing that would make it bigger than Apple, Microsoft, and the entire US banking system combined. It doesn't make sense.
So instead of throwing moon numbers, we're going to build this outlook step by step. Look at past performance, historical cycles. Factor in current fundamentals, adoption, partnerships, real-world usage. Project future demand in a world with cbdc's, tokenization, and enterprise adoption. XLM, stellar lumens, outlook. XLM's entire mission is cross-border payments, making money move as easily as email. Past performance. In the 2017 bull run, XLM peaked around 87 cents. In the 2021 cycle, it hit about 79 cents. Notice something? Unlike some coins that made new highs, XLM hasn't broken out past its 2017 top yet. Current price, 2025 hovering between 10 to 15 cents, depending on market swings. That's almost a 90% drop from its ADH. Adoption path, with partnerships like MoneyGram, cross-border payment corridors in Africa, and central banks testing Stellar for cbdc's. The foundation is there. Price outlook. Conservative if adoption is slow 50 cents to $1 by the next bull run. Moderate if cbdc pilots take off. More banks join $2 to $3 by 2030. Aggressive if Stellar becomes a major backbone for cross-border remittances globally $5 plus long-term. But let's be clear, $10 or $100 XLM. That's unrealistic. Why? Because at $10 with 27B supply, you're looking at a $270 billion market cap. Doable if it becomes a global standard, but it would need near-universal adoption. So the sweet spot for XLM in a real-world scenario is $1 to $3 by 2030. HBAR, HEDERA hash graph, outlook. Now, HEDERA is where things get spicy, because while Stellar is very focused on remittances, HEDERA is more like an enterprise-grade operating system for the internet. Past performance. HBAR hit an all-time high of 57 cents in 2021. Since then, it's been grinding back down, currently in the 5 to 7 cents range. Fundamentals. This is where HBAR shines. HEDERA's governing council includes Google, IBM, Boeing, Standard Bank, FIS, Ubisoft, and more. That's not hopium partnerships like some projects throw around. These are actual board seats where Fortune 500 companies run nodes and guide the network. Adoption path. HEDERA is already processing 1+ billion transactions per month. And these aren't just DeFi swaps or NFT mints. We're talking enterprise supply chains, tokenization of assets, carbon credits, and financial applications. Price outlook. Conservative. 50 to 70 cents, returning to its 2021 ADH in the next bull run. Moderate. $2 to $3. If enterprise adoption continues and HEDERA cements itself as the enterprise chain. Aggressive. $5 plus by 2030. If HEDERA becomes the go-to layer for tokenization of real-world assets and payments. At $5 with 50B supply, that's a $250 billion market cap. That's big, but not impossible, especially if tokenization of stocks, bonds, and cbdc's moves into the trillions. HBAR has the strongest chance among enterprise-focused chains to be worth several dollars long-term. ETH, Ethereum, the benchmark. I'll keep ETH short here, since this video is about XLM and HBAR. But we need to mention it because Ethereum is the yardstick for smart contracts. Past performance. $4,800 ADH in 2021. Current price, 2025, $2, $000, $200 range. Outlook by 2030. If Bitcoin goes to $150,000 to $200,000, ETH could realistically hit $10,000 to $15,000. Why does this matter? Because ETH is the benchmark, and if ETH grows 5-7x, you can realistically expect HBAR and XLM to follow with 10 to 20x moves in the same time frame, since smaller caps always move harder. The macro factor. Now, let's not ignore the elephant in the room: global economics. Inflation is still squeezing developing nations. CBDCs are being piloted in over 100 countries. Tokenization of assets, BlackRock, JP Morgan, HSBC are all testing it, is becoming a trillion-dollar trend. If this plays out, then guess what chains the world's financial systems will use? Not meme coins, not random speculative projects. but the ones that are efficient, compliant, and enterprise-friendly. That's Stellar and HEDERA's sweet spot, the investor's mindset. Here's where I've got to keep it 100 with you. If you're looking at XLM or HBAR today, you need patience. These aren't coins that are going to 100x overnight. They're long-term infrastructure plays. Think of it like buying into Amazon in the late 90s. For years, it looked boring. The stock barely moved. But fast forward 20 years, and Amazon became the backbone of the internet. That's the exact same potential here. Final price outlook by 2030. XLM Stellar. Conservative, $0.50 to $1. Moderate, $2 to $3. Aggressive, $5 plus. HBAR HEDERA. Conservative, 50 to 70 cents. Moderate, $2 to $3. Aggressive, $5 plus. So when people ask, what's the next 100x coin? The answer might not be in hype. It might be in the quiet, steady builders. XLM and HBAR aren't trying to go viral. They're trying to integrate into banks, governments, and enterprises. And if that vision plays out, these boring coins could end up being some of the most powerful positions you could hold through the end of this decade. Because in crypto, the loudest coins pump first. But the quiet, fundamental ones, they last the longest. So, after everything we've broken down today, from the current crypto market volatility to the real-world adoption of Stellar, XLM, and HEDERA HBAR, one thing is crystal clear. This so-called crash is not the end. It's a setup for the next wave. XLM is positioning itself as the global payments backbone, striking deals with financial institutions and even governments. HBAR, on the other hand, is slowly but surely becoming the infrastructure layer for enterprise blockchain, think aviation, healthcare, and even central bank systems. These aren't hype tokens. These are utility-driven, future-ready assets. When you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it's obvious the market shakeouts are designed to scare weak hands out so that institutions can scoop up these assets at a discount. The people who'll win in this game are not the ones panic selling today, but the ones willing to sit tight and accumulate smartly while others are distracted by fear. By 2030, if the adoption curves hold and the partnerships continue at the pace we're seeing, XLM and HBAR could be playing roles so massive in the digital economy that we'll look back at this period and say, wow, those prices were basically free. If you've made it this far, then you already know this is not financial advice, but it is food for thought. Do your research, understand the fundamentals, and don't let short-term noise blind you from long-term opportunities. If you found value in this breakdown, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss these deep dive updates on XLM, HBAR, and the broader crypto space. And let's make this interactive. Drop a comment below. Do you think XLM and HBAR will dominate the next bull run? Or do you see another project taking the lead? I'll be reading and responding to as many of your comments as I can. Remember, in crypto, knowledge and patience are the real currencies. Stack both, and you'll be ready when the tide turns. Stay sharp, stay informed, and I'll catch you in the next one.